So now we're going to get into some of the talks specifically about protocols, development of protocols. And first we're going to hear from Jim Kofler about the Mayo experience. Jim.
Wonderful.
You got Tony's phone right there.
Okay,
and
great.
You got the, whoa, I'll let it slide off there. What did they do? They messed it up. I had it perfect. Okay.
Okay, we'll see if I can move this without messing things up. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. It feels kind of weird being the only Jim this morning, but I'll see if I can get by. I'm going to be talking about our experience at Mayo with protocol management, our distribution and review strategies. And what I'm going to be covering is we'll first take a brief look back at where we were before we started taking control of our protocols. I'll go over some of the goals of a protocol system that we came up with. And then we'll look at where we're at now and some of the lessons that we learned along the way. Before I get into it, I want to really emphasize why this is so important to us and why it should be so important to you. At the time, we were doing over 500 scans a day, nearly 150,000 CT scans per year. And you need to remember that everything we do in a CT department starts with a protocol. The protocols really are the heart of everything we do at a CT imaging facility. I also want to emphasize that I acknowledge that we are a bit larger institution with lots of scanners. I know we're not the largest, but everything I'm going to talk about today, I want you to think about as being kind of scalable. Maybe not necessarily linearly, but certainly scalable. You can scale it down and scale it up. Keep in mind more the philosophies and the approach to the protocol issues. So back in about 2002 or so, we had 16 scanners located in 3 different buildings across our campus, the farthest one being about a mile down the street from the others. We had 4 different scanner models from one manufacturer. Currently we have a few more scanners, another building, and actually about 8 different models from 2 vendors. At the time when we first started this, when I went through and looked at things, we had over 450 protocol files. And these were located in different folders. Some were duplicates, some had very similar names, some were the same file in 2 different folders. There was a fair amount of disorganization, although there was certainly a sincere attempt to keep it organized, but they were kind of all over the place. We also had radiologist-specific versions of many protocols. These protocols were printed, stuffed into plastic sleeves, and placed in what we called our protocol books or binders. We estimated that we had about 1 to 5 requests for protocol changes every week. Usually there was some urgency associated with these. They wanted them done right now. Our protocols were managed by 6 lead technologists who worked pretty much independently of each other. In other words, there was no key protocol person. The leads fielded the requests and then felt obligated to go ahead and implement those requests. And I really want to emphasize that the leads at the time and currently still have many other responsibilities, including training, administrative duties, and scanning patients. So the protocol activity is really just a fraction of the work that they are responsible for. And these are what our protocol books looked like. They were huge, they were heavy. You can see they were printed copies stuffed in these plastic binders, and kind of as a testament to what a challenge it was to keep these things updated, they were littered with Post-its. The leads simply couldn't get to every scanner, every book to update it, so they'd call over there and say, put a Post-it on page 18, we need this done right now. And so as you flip through these, your heart just kind of sinks and go, oh my God, how in the world did they keep these up to date as well as they did even? And when you do a page count, it was actually the page equivalent of managing 2 copies of War and Peace, okay, with 1 to 5 changes every week. So the process was really inefficient. It was just a drain on our resources, and it made us very prone to errors, primarily because of the inconsistencies. Perhaps most importantly, there was a general sense of being on the brink of losing control. And I recall one time we had some billing code change that affected like 10 different protocols. And I literally saw the energy and enthusiasm from 3 of our leads just kind of drain from them as they heard this news, that they were going to have to go make all these changes and keep them up to date. It's not a great way for anybody to live and work. So we decided that we needed to take some actions. And the first thing that you absolutely positively need is buy-in from leadership. Leadership has to be behind this. And for us, we were really fortunate in that it was a radiologist that recognized this problem and realized it was only going to get worse. And this radiologist happened to be in leadership, so he kind of assigned us to take this over, which is critical. With buy-in from leadership, you get time and resources. If you don't have that, you will not succeed. You will not be able to do this trying to fit it into your ordinary, everyday responsibilities. You need to be able to carve out some time to spend on this. So the first thing we did was formed a small protocol review group. It consisted of some of the supervisors and the physicists, and we sought input from the CT leads, the technologists, the radiologists, the other physicists, CT leadership, nursing staff, just about anybody who had any interest in the protocols at all. We wanted to assess what was going on and how we could do things better. And from that, we determined a number of different goals that we wanted to achieve for an improved system. The goals are listed here. I'm actually going to go through these one by one, so I'm not going to read this slide. We're just going to start with the first goal, and that is having a manageable file system. We absolutely needed to reduce the number of files, and this is kind of a behind-the-scenes thing, but it's really important. So we thought that if we consolidated the models into a single protocol, the scanner models into a single protocol, that would greatly reduce the number of files we have. We also decided that we needed to eliminate the radiologist-specific protocols. And this, again, came from the same radiologist that suggested this, so we were very fortunate at this. And his point was, if you have 3 different protocols, so it matters what radiologist is scheduled on a scanner, how that patient's going to be scanned that day. So if you have 3 different protocols, clearly one has to be better than the other one. Why isn't everybody using that one? And so, again, with him behind this, we were able to implement this with very little pushback, although we did get some pushback, but they had to deal with him. We decided that we needed a file naming convention and a directory structure. And again, this sounds really, really obvious, but it's very, very important. A consistent way of naming things, a consistent way of placing them and storing them. And these are the electronic files now. So you can find things very easily, know exactly where things are, and you don't have this problem where people slightly renaming things or putting them in different folders. Just keeping things organized is critical. We limited access to our master protocol files only to the people that absolutely had to get at them, and that's the leads and the physicists. Fewer hands you have on it, the less chance there is of messing things up. And if it does get messed up, you only have a few phone calls to make to find out what happened and how to fix it. And I also want to let you know that we looked at lots and lots of other options. Among them was possibly databasing this somehow or using some custom software, and we built prototypes and did some evaluations. And we realized that it probably wouldn't be flexible enough for us, at least back at the time. We also kind of ran into a limit of our resources. We didn't have the IT support to develop to this what would have been a really huge software project. And the development timeline was just way out beyond what we needed in order to start taking control of this. So we didn't go down that avenue. The second goal was to have critiqued and optimized protocols. And to do this, we wanted them reviewed by a cross-section of individuals, and this was something that Bob mentioned yesterday and something that I think Diane will mention later on too, and that is you really need a team. And the core of the team is a physicist, a radiologist, and a technologist. We also consult with nurses, billing, scheduling, anybody else who is the particular expert of that component of the protocol. We want to make sure that everything we have on there is as accurate as it can possibly be. We also implemented that we needed approval for any major changes, and this was approval at a leadership level. In our case, it's our division chair or designated liaison. This is also important. You need some backing behind this. You need some official sign-off on this. If somebody has issues or problems with it, you can say, talk to the chief about this. Regarding how we come up with the scan parameters, this has been discussed throughout the summit already, so I won't spend a lot of time with this, but we typically start with an existing exam that we know that works. There are other venues to seek information from regarding that. And then we look for how we can improvement. The culture at Mayo is very much how can we improve things, so we get suggestions for improvements from everybody across the board, the technologists, the nurses, the physicists, the radiologists. We start out by matching the noise for other models and then kind of build for there. And to further address the question that was asked, we do always consider the latest scanner features and technologies. So we never dumb down a protocol just so it matches an existing protocol. We try to take advantage of everything we can to make that the best protocol possible. The third goal was to have clear and concise instructions. What we wanted to do was minimize the possibility of misinterpretation. And to do this, we wanted to have consistent and concise phrasing, use the same phrasing throughout every protocol where it was appropriate. We wanted to have a familiarity so the technologists could see that and know exactly what it means in an instant because they've seen it 1,000 times before on other protocols. We wanted to have a consistent structure, and this is kind of the flow of the protocol. We wanted to align the structure of the protocol with the workflow. What steps does the technologist take as they're going through an exam? Can we lay out a protocol to match that so things kind of flow in parallel? We wanted consistent formatting and color coding. Believe it or not, with all the scanners we have and the 60 technologists that rotate through all of them, it's sometimes easy to forget what scanner model you're working at. So we wanted to color code things so they could know immediately, match the label on the scanner with the label in the protocol, the colors, know what scanner they're on immediately, be consistent with our formatting. Again, it's a familiarity issue. They know exactly what they're looking at. They know exactly what that means. Everything in our protocols, from the font size to the bold to the underline to the color, is done with intention. And we also needed a consistent naming convention, and I'm not talking about the electronic files, no, I'm talking about the protocol titles and what gets included in the scanner, and I'll show you an example of that when I show you one of the protocols. The fourth goal was to have content for all parties. So for the technologists, we obviously had all the scan instructions, the positioning instructions, everything they need to know. We had information there for the nurses and for the radiologists and physicists. I know Cynthia mentioned this yesterday. We had the dose information, the minimum available retro recon, and the detector configurations. The last two goals were that the protocols could be quickly updated and that they would be available at the scanner. And to do this, we had several options. Clearly, printing them out wasn't practical for us. And we narrowed it down to kind of two things. And what we started with was a dedicated system. It was kind of a slimmed-down PC that had some limited access and things. What we ended up eventually using, we actually used this for about 5 or 6 years, and just within the past few years, we're migrating now to solely web-based systems. Leadership has decided that they want the technologists to have access to some other clinical applications, which means they need full-blown computers, which was fine with us because our dedicated systems were mirrored on the web anyway. We didn't really have to do any other work to do that. And everybody's familiar with using the web, so there weren't any training issues with that. So now we're web-based. This is on the Mayo internal web. Here's a picture of, and this is actually one of the older systems. There's our e-protocols, what we call them. I have to be honest, I did clean up this console area before I took the photograph. It's usually a little bit more cluttered. The only difference between this system and the web-based system is that there's an extra keyboard with our web-based system. And so now I want to just take you through what the system looks like. This is our home page, which I think you saw once or twice already. I want to step through the different components of it. Up here we have our division list, and this is where you would click through to eventually end up at a protocol. Here we have some other supplemental material that the leads and the technologists wanted to have access to with a click. Down below here are some quick reference materials that they don't go to very often, but it's nice to know they're there when they need them. We have some more in-depth tutorials and reviews up here for them. a little section for some physics tips and hints. This is the one that probably caught your attention. This is the news and announcements. We realized that the technologists view this page throughout their entire day, and we thought it would be a good way to communicate with them any information that they might be interested in, including some upcoming training talks, new stuff that might be posted in the protocols, things of that nature. We have one lead who's responsible for this. She has a fondness for animals and costumes. And when I first saw some of the things that she had been posting, I kind of flinched. I thought, that's not really professional. But as it turns out, it generates a lot of interest with the technologists. They talk about it. She puts some silly things up there. And they actually look forward to every time she puts a new picture up. So why not? It keeps it kind of fresh. It keeps it interesting. And they have to look at it every day. Okay. Down at the bottom, we've got some contact information, including some pager numbers in case they need to get a hold of us in a hurry, as well as the date that this page was last updated. So as we go to the division list, if you click on one of the divisions, it brings you to our division page. And I'm going to kind of skip around as I click through this just to show you some of the more interesting aspects of what we have. This particular division page is the neuro page. They've got a lot of protocols. They decided to subcategorize their protocols to help them find things easier. When you click on the name of a protocol, it will bring you to a scanner index page. And now I've switched to the abdomen and pelvis protocol index page. And I think Cynthia showed this yesterday. The reason I'm showing this is to emphasize that every time we get a new scanner, every time we get a new technology, we have to accommodate it in our protocol. So when we got the dual tube system, that spawned a number of new protocols that we need to accommodate for and need to develop. So the work really never, ever stops, not just modifying existing protocols, but working as new stuff comes in. So each one of these color-coded boxes is a hyperlink down the document to the written instructions for that particular scanner. So these instructions, as I'm going to show you, all exist in one long file. They're just on separate pages, and then that again keeps our page, our number of files limited. So as we click on one of these colored boxes, it brings us to the protocol. And the protocol I'm going to show you is for our routine chest. Again, it has kind of a nice cross-section of some of our the different features that we have in our protocols. The page is a little bit big to display on the slide, so what I'm going to do is shrink it down and just kind of use that minimized version as a navigation graphic and scroll down. At the very top, on the upper left-hand side, we've got our protocol number, 02_2. This is the number that appears in the scanner. When you go to pick a protocol in the scanner, you typically click on a graphic of a body part and you get this drop-down list of all your protocols. Well, the first thing in that list is a number followed by a textual description of the protocol. We decided to use a number, first of all, because it orders real nice in the drop-down box. Second of all, you can be limited in characters. So even if the title is truncated, you can always see that number. There's a one-to-one correspondence with the number in the protocol and the number on our e-protocol system, the number on the scanner, number on our e-protocol system. Again, a list of the scanners that this particular, these scan instructions are for. On the left-hand side, again, we have some navigation buttons to go back to our main homepage or back up to that scanner index, and of course the title in the middle. A last updated date is on the far right-hand side. As we go down a little bit, the first thing you'll come to are the general information section. This is any general information that the technologist would need to know before they're really ready to start the scan. This is patient positioning stuff. On this example, there's the criteria for pediatric patients. Again, just any kind of general information before they are getting close to scanning. Below that is the nursing instructions. The contrast instructions for this protocol aren't too interesting, so I included one from a different protocol. Just to give you an idea, we try to be as complete as we can, including hyperlinks to more details if needed. In this case, there's a hyperlink to a weight-based chart for IV contrast. We go down a little bit more. There's our topogram or scout information, our start and stop locations, any kind of last-minute stuff that the tech would need to know before they start the scan. Cynthia showed this grid yesterday, so I'm not going to go into into any detail, but we do have the different scanner models listed side by side to keep things consolidated. The labels on the left-hand side do match the terminology in the scanner. And as Cynthia mentioned, we do have our special things appended at the bottom here. Minimum retro, the dose, the CTDI, and the base protocol. Here's our recon and reformatting information. Cynthia showed this as well. I just wanted to point out that there are some Mayo-specific things on this. And we do have the filming information on this, even though we don't film anymore. And I don't know if any of you were wondering about that, but this is part of our emergency network downtime procedures in case we absolutely need to film because of a network downtime. We thought it would be easier to keep this information in there rather than try to get it back in an emergency situation. And finally, we have the billing information and which radiologist by location will be reading the scans. So that's kind of the general overview of the elements of what's in our protocols. Some are obviously a lot more complicated than this. Some have sample images in this, but these are really the basic elements of what's in our protocols. A few things, kind of odds and ends, that I might not have mentioned. Each one of our CT leads is assigned to a division. We have one lead per division with a backup. Neuro has two because they're a little bit bigger. The leads and the leads only are responsible for updating the scanners. Nobody else, the technologists, the physicists, the apps people, are allowed to update the protocols in the scanner. Only the leads. We do not password protect this. It is policy, and we haven't had any problems with it. We do have one lead assigned to triaging requests. This is still on. To triaging requests, we do have a dedicated email account for CT protocols, so if anybody has questions, concerns, requests, they can send it to the email. Typically, the leads are approached kind of one-on-one by somebody with an idea, and it's their responsibility to follow through with that. What they are supposed to do is send that request back to the triage, or back to the email address, just so our triager can keep track of how many things are going on and try to avoid things falling through any cracks. The protocols are created in Microsoft Word, including all the hyperlinking, and then they're converted to PDFs. Neither one of these programs is without some quirks, and I didn't want you to think that this was a flawless, perfect system without any problems, because it's certainly not. And working with these very common applications, which is one of the reasons we chose them, because everybody had them. We didn't need to buy any new software for this. Everybody knows pretty much how to use them, but they do cause us some headaches every now and then. A few other lessons learned along the way here is that it's important to maintain a history of the changes that you make with protocols. And actually, when we make major changes, we archive a copy of that and then make the major change. A few reasons for this. One is if you are ever challenged 3 months or 6 months or even a year later by somebody who comes up and says, "Who said you could make these changes? Why do you guys think you can do this?" Which has happened. You go back into the histories and you say, this change was made on this date, it was approved by these people, and the reason they wanted it changed was this. And again, we have that approval process, so the division chair has signed off on it. Another reason is if anybody is interested or gets involved in a retrospective study or anything of that nature, and they call you up and say, what were the scan parameters we used back in 2005 for our chest exam? You can go back into the archive and retrieve that information for them. It's very important to enforce structure. This includes the file naming, the formatting, the process, everything. When people are busy and they're in a hurry and trying to get things done, the structure is the first thing to go. That's where they start cutting corners. And it's a real slippery slope, because it can be kind of contagious and it can be very hard to recover from if it gets too far. So you need to make sure that structure is always very strictly enforced. Keep focused on the goals. It's easy to kind of spin off on tangents on these as you're working on them. I don't know how many times that we've had conversations with the lead saying, no, we should include this instructions, no, we should include that. And at that point, we take a step back and we say, what would be the easiest for the technologist to interpret to successfully complete the exam? When you step back and look at it that way, you can kind of get over those problems real quickly and move forward. Communicate major changes. Nobody likes surprises. And even though we try to make sure everybody who's interested in a protocol is invited into the discussion when we are making changes, that doesn't always happen. So when you make major changes, make sure that people know so they're not caught off guard while they're reading the images or doing the scan. All general team advice that you ever heard in your life really applies here. Be respectful of people's opinions. Be respectful of people's times. All of those things. Everybody has something to bring to the table with this. Everybody has their own unique perspectives, their own unique experiences and expertise. And you need to be open-minded and really listen to what people are saying. I can't remember how many times I thought I had the best solution for something in the world, and the leads will list 5 things that I either didn't know about or didn't think about. I'm like, oh, you're right. And then from there, then we can work on it to come to a practical solution. So just be respectful of the team. And meet regularly. The physics group meets every month with the lead technologists. Even if we don't have a full agenda, we always spend the entire hour and usually run late. It's really important. When you get everybody face-to-face and talking about things, all of these other things kind of come to the surface, and then they can be addressed and solved. We don't meet as regularly with the radiologists. What we do is keep a list of problems, the issues that we need to consult with the radiologist on, and if those can't be handled offline, we will schedule a division protocol meeting where the division chair will invite all of the radiologists from the division in to work on these issues. This happens maybe every 2 or 3 months, a little bit more frequently in some divisions, a little bit less in others. We usually have a turnout of maybe 3 or 4 radiologists that come to these, but we really get things done. The big important answers, we just knock through them and we leave that meeting with everything resolved. In conclusion, then, the support from leadership is huge. You absolutely, positively can't do anything without that. Bob Pizzatello had some great suggestions for how to get that support. I think you can kind of fold it back into one of the first slides I showed. Protocols really are the heart of everything you do. And if leadership can't dedicate the time and resources to making sure those are the best, well, then you need to do something else, I guess. The team is essential. Again, the radiologists, physicists, technologists, you absolutely need all those different perspectives to get things right. The approval process is critical. You need to have some teeth behind this. You need to have it back up to leadership when you need to. You need to have a defined protocol process. This is from the requested change to publication. If you have any gaps or holes in here, they will grow and things will start to crumble. And finally, you have to appreciate that this is not a one-time get-it-done project. This is an ongoing project that will be there forever. You have to maintain it. You have to keep it active. You have to keep it updated. And again, it's perhaps one of the most important things that you could do, so it needs the attention. It needs the resources. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a few questions for Jim.
I have a question about, you said you didn't do a database after all. You decided to do this with Word and all that. But have you discussed with your vendors whether there might be some kind of possibility of having at some point in the future a program whereby you maintain this in a programmatic form, maybe in a database form, and then it had a method to be able to export those, like XML based or whatever, and then they could be imported into the scanners, or even updated the scanners automatically, so there's a more routine way to handle that?
I would love that. We have been in discussion with some of the vendors. They've been receptive, but I think the message I get is that we're kind of unique. This isn't the bulk of their customer base needing this kind of attention. I actually think everybody could benefit from something like that.
Yeah.
There have been some attempts by some of the vendors to help us out, and they've been great things, kind of on the scanner side of things. But there still is a disconnect between what's in our scan instructions versus what's in the scanners, and how we can best manage what's in the scanners and make sure that it's consistent and reflects what's in the protocols. And I think Diana's going to talk a little bit about that.
I think they find more clients would actually be interested in that because they have multiple sites and things like that. It's not necessarily, I mean, you have 16 scanners at one geographic location, but there may be people that have them in 5 locations that they still want to do that. And one other clarification was, you made a comment in one of your very early slides that you wanted to consolidate protocols and not have different versions, out there. But then later on, you show different. You definitely do have different protocols
Yes.
for a different scanner because I mean they're different. With
Yeah. When we started, we had one vendor, and it was very easy to keep these on a table. After we got a few scanners from another vendor, we still maintained them on the same table. As our scanner technologies kind of diverged, and we still had some older ones and some really new ones, we couldn't put them in. They were too different. Our goal is if the instructions above and below that grid are the same, let's try to get everything we can on that grid. If the instructions above or below need to be different, then we need to pull it apart and make it separate. That's something we, in the beginning especially, that we really tried to avoid, is breaking those apart into separate
Thank
protocols.
you.
Time for one question. Sorry, Donovan. John?
What was that?
One question.
Good question. So do you have special protocols for clinical trials?
Yes, we do. That's a
they're
whole
numbered
different
and all
section in the division list. One of the divisions is called research, and we do have a whole list of research protocols that the leads maintain as well, and we also can accommodate works in progress for our regular clinical protocols.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks very much, Jim.